Welcome everybody to DES 104. This is our beginning image editing class and we are on week 2. Today is Tuesday and we're going to jump right into how to do our assignment, our assessment, and we're going to talk a little bit about our discussion. I know some of you had some concerns about embedding images in the discussion, so we're going to also talk about that. And any other questions that you've brought with you tonight, I would love to address. So now is the time to ask. Usually week 1 is the kind of the feeler to kind of see how things flow, how things go, and to see what problems we run into along the way. So I want to make sure that week 2 is seamless, that we have no hiccups as far as getting our software downloaded and as far as using the Photoshop software as well. I thought you guys did a fantastic job on week 1 and all the assignments that you had. How did you feel week 1 went? Kind of like to get a feel for how it went. Anybody? Good, yeah. So I know that we've had some of us kind of struggled a little bit, but a lot, I was very, very surprised, not surprised, but I guess proud of how well everyone did during week 1. Week 1's always a hard week because it's a new instructor, it's a new class, new software for most of us, new tools. And so it's really hard for us to get the hang of things. Usually by week 3, we're feeling good and we're getting used to how things flow. But I thought everyone did an outstanding job for week 1. So give yourself a little applause, a little pat on the back. I know I was rooting for you. I was very pleased to see the assignments that came through. Some of you missed turning in the assignment, and don't worry, life happens, and I get it. Please make sure that those get turned in, though. You have this week, so you have an extra week for a 20% deduction in your grade, but it's better than a 0. And honestly, it's well worth it. So turn it in, get those points that you deserve, and keep that grade up. Because the worst thing that could happen is that you'd have to take this class again, and no one wants to have to retake a class. So let's make sure we get those turned in. You do have an extra week to do that. So this Saturday will be the deadline for week 1 work. On that note, I've had a few students contact me about grade questions. They were not clear on feedback, or maybe they perhaps thought that something was graded incorrectly, and I'm so glad you're doing that. Please email me and contact me if there's anything that looks off. Most likely it's a mistake. I've got 30 plus students in this class, so when I'm going through grades, things can get submitted and problems can happen. So it happens to the best of us, but I appreciate your patience with me. And like I said, if anything sticks out, please monitor your grade first and foremost. Make sure you're keeping an eye on it. Make sure everything is correct in your eyes. And then if you see anything that needs to be fixed or corrected, please reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to go over it with you or get it fixed. So, do you guys feel lost, or are we feeling okay with Photoshop? Okay, kinda. Yeah, it's hard to gauge during the first week. I will say this, week 2 is a little bit easier in terms of the time spent on the assignment, and you won't need to be creating new documents. You're going to use images that we provide you. So that's the good news. If you're feeling lost, if you need extra tutoring, if you are stuck, you're welcome to contact me. Most likely my office hours will be during the multi-session. So if you need more immediate help, please contact the learning coach, Wanda Bryant. Her schedule is posted under the announcements. Please reach out to her to set up a tutoring time. And then also please visit the Student Success Center if you need more of an immediate response in terms of trying to troubleshoot. Because what they can do is they can pull up your screen, they can see what's going on, and can answer your questions 9 times out of 10. So if it can't wait until Thursday, please make sure you reach out to those those resources that we have in this class. If you are feeling lost or you do have a question, please seek out the announcements first. Most likely that's going to be that's always updated, and there probably will be an answer there. Frequently asked questions are always addressed there. And lecture recordings will be found there as well. And also our assignment specs, anything that you need to know, any extra materials will be posted under the announcements, okay? We also have course media and Linda videos that you should be watching and keeping up with. So those are required. And that will help you kind of get inundated with Photoshop a little bit, because we're covering the basics on how to tackle the assignments. But if you're going to need to watch the Linda videos and the tutorials and the demos to understand more of the theory behind why we're using what tool. Browser searches, you can always Google it if you have a question about Photoshop. What does this tool do? And you can Google it and you'll find your answer. But I'm happy to help you, but we have a learning coach that's there to tutor and there to answer questions. So please see her. And the Student Success Center is also available to you at any time. They're even open late on Saturdays because that's deadline day. So please go visit. If you don't know how or haven't been there yet, please let me know and I would be happy to show you. And also I sometimes feel like there's a little stigma associated with the Student Success Center because it's only for failing students, right? Or students who are struggling. No, sometimes I have A students who know the material very well and are familiar with the software, and they go just get feedback on their assignment before they turn it in. And those students are highly successful in my class. So make sure you do that. Multi-sessions, all options. You don't have to come to mine if the time doesn't work, especially for you East Coasters. If you don't, I know it's very late the time because I'm in on Pacific time, so we're on clear sides of the other spectrum. So if my multi-session doesn't work out, there's a whole list of the 100 level class multi-sessions that are available to you throughout the week at different times. Go to those, okay? They can also help. And then obviously email me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to clear them up. Are there any questions about that, about where we need to go, our resources for this class, how we can be successful? If not, we'll go ahead and move on. So notes on the grading. I want you to check any, most of you did very well on this assignment. You met the criteria. If I gave you any feedback at all, it would be in the comment section of your uh, assignment. So how to see your grade comments in the announcement, check the rubric because the rubric will kind of illustrate where you lost points. And then I would have given any additional comments in the comment section. So most of if you did lose points, it was just maybe not reading the directions properly or maybe leaving something out or the correct file type. The correct file type is so important. Can anyone tell me why the correct file type is important? Why would I need a Photoshop file? The PSD file. Any guesses? Yeah, exactly. So reason why I would need the correct file type is because if I will need your original file so I can check, did you use layers? I won't be able to see whether or not you use layers if you just submit a JPEG. So I need to have the original file. And so just pay attention to what file type it's required for the class. And then just kind of relating everything you do into your class to practice for your future career. How many of you are taking this to pursue graphic design as a career, or is this more of a hobby? So yeah, we've got someone. Okay, so yes, career definitely. So most likely, most of us are taking this to pursue graphic design as a career, and you'll notice there's other avenues you can go within the graphic design industry. But pretend that I, as your instructor, am your client. So some of you might be freelancing or working for an employer. So pretend your employer comes back to you and says, "Okay, this was great. Hey, Misty, this was an awesome design. What I suggest, there's a couple ways you can improve on this," and then that he or she gives you their list of feedback. As a employee or as the freelancer who's designing for a client, you kind of want to take that feedback and fix it, right? You want to make sure that you are constantly improving on that design to not only make your employer happy and your instructor, but also that's how you make money, right? You make money by being a good designer. So we want to be able to improve constantly. So just kind of pretend and relate this back to your career goals. So keep that in mind. Yeah, and exactly. And you asked what you did wrong, and so that's very good. So always, if there's ever a question of well, why did I lose points there? Or my grade's not, if there's any questions at all, ask. Or maybe if comments aren't very clear, well, I addressed everything in the assignment. Why did I get points lost? So anytime there's a question about feedback, let me know and I can be more clear. It's really hard to kind of explain design in just typing it out. I wish there was a better way to do it. I guess I could, anyways, it's just easier if I could show you. So we're trying to do the best we can with what we have. But if you ever have a question, yes, come back and ask. Make the revisions and the resubmissions for a regrade. If you got points lost, I am welcoming everybody to resubmit. You get one chance to resubmit, and I am an advocate for resubmissions because I think it allows you to learn from our mistakes. And to be honest, as a professional graphic designer myself, I never come out with something perfect the first time around. I always have to go through revisions. So even the best of us have to go through different drafts before we get our final product and we're pleased with it. So continue to practice, play with the tools and the techniques. Don't get discouraged if you lose points. We're not always going to get a perfect grade the first time, but you are allowed a second time to turn in your work. So take advantage of that option, okay? All right, so assignment 2, how many of you looked ahead? Do we know what we're doing? It's actually going to be a fun day. I'm excited for this. This is one of my favorite weeks to teach this class because we do a lot of fun things. You just get to play around. So if you've looked ahead, we are doing repair and retouching. And so I've got a few tips to give you. First tip is a big one. Because we're limited with time, we're not going to be able to go through every single tool demo. But lecture 1 on week 2 demonstrates all the tools that you're going to need to use. So please watch that. And then there's more demos in the media videos and the Linda videos. So if you want more tutorials on patch and content aware, I suggest that you check those out. Look at but don't copy the benchmark examples. I know that we had some students kind of grab the examples and then put them in their Photoshop design and try to pass it off, but that's not the idea here. The examples are there to just show you what, kind of give you an idea of what's expected or what it should look like. So make sure that it's your own work, because passing off someone else's work as yours is considered plagiarism, and then there's college it goes against college policy, and there's a whole bunch of reprimanding that they'll do. So we don't want to go there. And plus, in the real life, in the real world, we can't copy other people's work, and we'll either get sued or we'll lose business. So let's pretend and not pretend, but let's try to make it a habit not to do that. So look at all 4 of the image. So if you'll go with me to assignment 2 and download all 4 of those images, and we're going to be looking at their problems before we choose. And then once we look at the problems that they need, we're going to decide what tools we're going to use. So each photo will require a different set of tools to tweak and to repair and to retouch. Neither one of those pictures are probably going to use the same kind of effects and tools. That maybe 1 or 2 might overlap, but each one is its own project and will require its own set of tools. All right, so I'm going to go over the spot healing tool. So if you don't already have Photoshop up, I would like you to bring it up for me, open it up, and get those pictures downloaded. When you have the pictures downloaded to your computer, open them up in Photoshop and give me a little smiley face in the chat box so I'll know that you're ready to go, and then I'll start the demo. Until then, I'll just keep talking. I'll go over a few more things. We're going to go over the spot healing tool. And we're going to talk about content aware, proximity match. We're going to choose brush sizes and hardness. We're going to go over the healing brush. Healing brush basically takes a sample and pastes over. We're going to learn how to do all these retouching and repairing. I guess what's the word? I'm sorry. We're going to learn how to retouch and repair by using layer masks. So we're not. So this is a non-destructive form of photo editing, and I'll show you how to do a couple other things. So again, give me a smiley face when you are in Photoshop and have those 4 pictures downloaded. Until then, I wanted to talk about the discussion really quick. So I'm going to pull up my screen because I know I had some students ask me how to embed photos. So I want to make sure that we all know how to do that. I'm going to share my screen to my internet browser here, and we're going to go to discussions, and I'm going to go down here. We need to be in week 2 though, so go back to discussions. All right, so here is a little link that you are sent to under discussion 1. There's a little link that sends you that it will send you to. Actually, just let me show you. So in discussion 1, week 1, we kind of reviewed this. So if you go down here, scroll down, and then there is a link here at the bottom, how to embed an image in a discussion or to reply as a student. So if you click this link, it will take you to this page. And so you can embed an image file directly into a discussion reply using the image icon. So you'll open your discussion just like I did. I clicked on discussion 2. And then you write your reply, and you found a really cool example that you wanted to share. So you're going to create a new discussion, hit reply. You're going to click this image icon right here, this little image picture icon. And it's going to prompt you to select an image. So you can either do it by providing the URL, Canvas, or if you have it on Flickr, okay? So most likely you'll be finding it online. So you'll probably need the URL, and you'll put it here in this box. And then once you locate the image that you want to embed an image from the web, you're going to click the URL button. And then if you don't know how to do that, there's a little link here that it will explain how to do it. So just click that, and we'll go into more detail. Okay. So I'll go back, but this will give you more explanation on how to do that if you are familiar with it. So you'll put the link there. And then to embed an image from your Canvas files, you'll click the Canvas button, and you'll embed an image from Flickr. Click the Flickr button, post the link in there if it's a URL, and then you can give the dimensions if you need. And then just hit update, and it will post it right into your discussion for you. So this is ready to go to post your response. You'll just hit post reply. And just like we see with Abraham Lincoln, this is how students will view your post. I also found a new trick to show you. So for instance, I'll go to Google. You can do all that, enter in the URL. Another way that I found is handy. So I'll click on, let's do raster versus vector. Okay, and I'll go to images. All right, Misty's ready. Great, thank you. So say I wanted to embed this image. I found it online, and it's about raster versus vector. So I'm going to use this one. If I highlight it and copy it, it will allow me to go into the discussion. I'll click reply. And it will let me paste it in. So that's also another way that you can do it. So if you go to Google Images and just highlight it, and then go to discussions and paste it in, that's also another easy way to do it. So just copy and paste. All right. So does that kind of answer our questions on how to embed an image? Probably simple, right? Okay. So as long as we are feeling good, I'm going to open up Photoshop. I don't know how many pictures we're going to get to in this lesson, or this lecture. So we'll start with this one, because this one is going to require a lot of work. So the first thing that I see is that this is an older photo. Now, how many of you are familiar with repair and retouching? Have you guys played with those tools at all? Are we familiar with it? Okay, so this will be a very beginner's course. So I'm going to open up this photo. This picture is image 4. Yep, that's fine. It's okay if we haven't had any experience. I'll show you where these tools are located. So right here, you'll often see a Band-Aid indicating this is going to be the repair the healing tools right here, the repair and retouching. So you'll see there's a spot healing brush if you hold it down, healing brush tool, patch tool, content aware, red eye tool. So we won't go into all of these because we won't need red eye, I don't think, but we will be using quite a few of these. You also have the clone tool, the clone stamp tool. And what's neat is if you hover over a particular tool, what it will do is it will tell you what it does. So the healing brush tool, well, that repairs imperfections. It uses pixels from another part of the image and helps heal that spot. So if I were to click on my healing brush tool, and in my layers panel, before you begin any work, you need to create a new layer. We're going to do all our work on the new layer and not on the original photo. Okay, so just remember, this is a non-destructive editing technique, so we don't want to ruin or do any changes to the original. So all of our changes will be done on new layers. So I have my healing brush tool, and it will allow me to click areas of the picture, and it's going to kind of grab pixels from surrounding areas and kind of help heal these spots. So that's kind of how I'm going to tackle these water spots. Sometimes it doesn't always translate. So like right now it's grabbing the fence, and that's not what I want it to do. So it just depends on where you're at, what part of the picture. You can most likely, really small areas, the healing brush tool will work. So I can go into this roof and kind of click away these little spots, I guess. So in this tutorial, I'm going to repair and retouch this old damaged photograph. I'm going to be using Photoshop to do it. But the photograph I'll be using has this, this looks like a rip on it, this little white piece of paper. It looks like part of the picture ripped off. And I'm going to repair this. I'm also going to retouch areas that are less damaged. And I'm going to do it all using the clone stamp tool, the spot healing brush tool, the content aware patch tool, and other various healing and repairing tools. I'm also going to use the adjustment panel to adjust the brightness, the contrast, and the color. So first I'm going to want to, I'm going to delete this layer here before I make any changes. I'm going to adjust the coloring of the photo. So I can do that here at the bottom by creating an adjustment layer. So if I click new, and it gives me lots of different options, and I want you to experiment with each one and kind of see what, each photo you turn in is going to look a little different. So for this one, first place I'd like to go to is curves. And I'm going to move the layers over so you can see. And if you click and move the straight line, what it does is it kind of adjusts the coloring, the light, and the shadows. And the point of photo editing is not to dramatically change your photo. You want to preserve the original as much as possible. But this is going to help me lighten up the photo just a bit so it's not so dark. We don't want it dark. We want it light. So we're going to add a little bit of light in there. Not too much where it, burns the photo or looks unnatural, but we want to preserve the natural part of it. That looks good. It will also allow you to adjust red, green, or blue individually. So I can take out some of the red in that photo by adjusting my curve. You see how that was done? So if I go, this way, it adds a lot of red. If I go this way, I'm taking out red. And right now it had a lot of red. So I'm going to take it out. And then the green. I don't need that much green. And then I can go back in here with the blue. And I don't really need to do much change to the blue, but I'm going to keep it on auto. And what's neat is it lets you see the changes in real live, so you can kind of preview it before you settle on the setting. And once you like everything, you can hit OK. So it's made that adjustment. I'm also going to click on another adjustment layer. So down here at the bottom, clicking on this little circle. Another place I want to change is levels. And this will allow me to kind of increase contrast a little bit, light, dark. So that's another place you can go. So just kind of play around with it. Let's see, color balance. That I kind of played around with the color balance a little bit, but you could bring in more reds, more magentas, more greens if you wanted to, make that grass really look green. Kind of take out that yellow. Okay, that looks good. And then probably another one I'd want to do is let's do brightness and contrast. So contrast will allow me to kind of tighten up the focus, and the brightness does just that. It will brighten up the photo so it's not so dark. So I recommend using your adjustment layers and settling on coloring and brightness before you go in and start spot healing all of the wear and tear. All right. I can even go back into these levels by double clicking, and then I can adjust things as I need. I can just move these around. Bring that green in. Are there any questions so far on how to add an adjustment layer and how to adjust that adjustment layer? And like I said, I recommend doing the adjustment layer, adding the adjustment layers before you do any spot healing. Okay, so now we know how to do an adjustment layer. I want to also talk about what an adjustment layer is. So an adjustment layer basically applies color and tonal adjustments to your image without permanently changing pixel values. So for example, rather than making a levels or curves, so like I did levels or curves here, adjustment directly to my image, I can create a levels or curves adjustment layer, which is what I created. So anytime I want to hide these, it preserves my original photo. But if I add those back, so basically it's easily removable. These changes are not permanent, and that's what's so wonderful about this option in Photoshop. So the color and tonal adjustments are stored in the adjustment layer and apply to all the layers below it. You can correct multiple layers by making a single adjustment rather than adjusting each layer separately if you wanted. You can even discard your changes and restore the original image at any time. So I can either hide them or I can just click and drag to the garbage and delete. Okay? So I want you to kind of experiment with these adjustment layers. I'll give you a minute or two to kind of play around with what each one does. You basically want to fill the layers and let kind of fill a layer with this. We'll go into more about how to do that, but I just want to make sure that you guys knew how to add an adjustment layer and how to make those adjustments on that separate layer instead of on the original photo. So adjustment layers provide a couple advantages. So number one is huge, the non-destructive edits. You can try different settings, re-edit the adjustment layer at any time. You can also reduce the effect of the adjustment by lowering the opacity of the layer. So in this case, for the color balance, I can click on this opacity here, bring it down, and so it's not so green. You see that? I'm adjusting the opacity a little bit, probably about 30%. I'll go on this brightness and contrast, and I'll delete the opacity a little bit. So you can already see it's darkening. It's just making it a little bit more transparent. So it's not such a stark difference. Same thing with the levels. And go into the opacity here, kind of bring it down. So if you feel something's a little too intense, you can kind of tone it down by adjusting the opacity. So that's a huge point to make with this. Also, selective editing. You can paint on the adjustment layers image mask to apply an adjustment to part of an image. So say I'll go back to 100% on all of these, just like we practiced during week 1. So I'll click on this and say I want everything magenta. But I only want the dogs to be magenta. I don't want the whole background to be. So what you could do is get your brush tool, select black, and then I can start painting and start removing that color from the dogs. And in this case, I want the opacity to be 100%. So as you can see here, it's already starting, or the grass even. See how I'm kind of erasing my adjustment? I only wanted it on the people. But so that's what's nice about this is you can be very selective about the parts of the picture that you adjust. So say you only wanted the dogs to be darker or be more red or brown, and you didn't want the grass to be red or brown, you can go ahead and paint with black to erase the adjustment layer effects. So if you only want selective editing, this is a great way to do it. Are there any questions so far? I did want to also mention that later you can control not only which parts of the image are adjusted by re-editing the layer mask, you can vary the adjustment by painting on the mask itself. So make sure you're on the mask when you're painting, and you can use different tones of gray. So instead of stark black, like I'm on now, you can adjust the opacity to be more of a gray, and it will have a lighter effect. And then also there's an ability to apply adjustments to multiple images. You can copy and paste the adjustment layers between these images and apply the same color and tonal adjustments to another. So if we were working with a series of photos that had the same coloring and needed the same effects, instead of doing it to each photo, you could just select them all, copy, and then paste them into another Photoshop file if you wanted. So that's really helpful with adjustment layers and fill layers. And also I wanted to note, because adjustment layers contain adjustment data rather than pixels, they increase the file size far less than standard pixel layers, which is very nice. So if you're working with an unusually large file, however, you may want to reduce the file size by merging adjustment layers into pixel layers, but we won't get into that because we don't need to know that for this assignment. Basically, I just want you to get used to and familiar with adding adjustment layers and playing with each one to kind of see what effect it gives. The way you learn best is if you experiment and start practicing and getting familiar with what each tool does. All right. All right. Any questions? Hopefully this is pretty straightforward. Okay, lots of no's. That's all right. Good. That's good. All right, and if you at all needed to make, edit an adjustment or a fill layer, you just double click on that specific adjustment there, and then this will allow you to, in the layers panel, and this will allow you to choose the content options. So you can make the desired changes in the properties panel right here. So just double click on that layer, that particular layer, and it will allow you to make those adjustments. All right, so that is what adjustment layers are. And what's nice about this is if I go back into levels, I can kind of control this a little bit more. Close this out. Here we go. Can kind of experiment. Again, we want to preserve the as natural looking as possible. Okay, so now that we've adjusted the layers, we've added adjustment layers, now we need to go in and fix these little water spots, and we've got a big little white patch, a big white patch right there that we've got to fix. So we're going to switch gears here, and I do recommend, like I said, starting with the adjustment layers first. Okay, then we're going to add a new layer. So go ahead and click on a new layer with me. Okay, so we practice adjusting curves. Let's go back to the curves thing. I want to talk about this just a little bit more. So with this panel open, so in the adjustments panel, once you click the curves button to view the properties panel, which we're on right now, the tonality of the photograph is represented as a straight diagonal line. But when the adjustment is made, the line curves in one direction or the other, so up or down. So after an auto adjustment, I can still tweak individual colors to my liking if I want. So I can still kind of pull on these lines here to kind of give more change. And I can create a control point and drag to make a curve. I can make it, very curvy or not. So it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish and which photo you're on. Dragging a point up or down lightens or darkens the tones in the picture. So as you can see, if I go up, it makes it light. If I go down, it darkens the photo. So this adjusts the amount of light that you have in the photo. Dragging to the left or the right increases or decreases the contrast. So if I go to the left, it's very contrasting. It almost burns the photo. If I go to the right, there's not a lot of contrast. So remember, up is light, down is dark. Left and right are adjusting the contrast. How crisp and clean is this photo? So I just wanted to let you know that it depends on the direction. And if necessary, I can click elsewhere on the line to create a second point and drag it if I wanted to. So this will allow me to, adjust different parts of the picture. So now I've got this little Bezier curve going on here. So I'm going to click again. This will allow me to add some contrast to different parts of the picture. So that's kind of cool. And I can add up to about 14 points if I want, but I find that 1 or 2 is usually all that's needed for this photo. In fact, I only really need 1. So when I like what I see, I can move on. I can be done. We're going to move all this up. Like this. Oh. And if you don't want it, once you clicked on there, if you just click it, select it, and then hit delete if you don't want that on your line. So that's another way to kind of adjust it. Okay, so if I wanted to make the tones in this photograph black and white and gray, I could just choose image down here or go up to image, click mode, and then select black and white. But I'm not going to do that, or grayscale. But I'm not going to do that because I like this photo as it is, and I want to maintain the colors in this picture. Are there any questions so far? All right, now we added brightness and contrast. That was one other adjustment layer that we added. Now I like how the photograph has changed already with just a few simple adjustment layers that we've added, but I would like to see it slightly brighter, yet without losing any contrast. So to do so, I could continue to make adjustments in the curves, but there's an easier way to do that instead of moving the curve up and down. In the adjustments panel, I'll click on brightness and contrast. See that? Then in the properties panel, I'm going to move the sliders until I like how it looks. So I can add more contrast this way, or I can decrease the contrast if I don't want it to be so contrasting. I can adjust the brightness and the darkness that way. So going left to right, moving that slider up and down, it's a good way to adjust brightness and contrast easily. Now, if you haven't already, now would be a good time to kind of save the file with a new name. Make sure that you have it named the way that the assignment requires you to. This is going to save your progress and preserve the original file. So to do so, you'll choose File, you'll hit Save As, and type in the name. Then you're going to choose Photoshop for the format. Make sure it says Photoshop PSD, and we want Photoshop to be the #1 choice there. And you want to preserve the layers, absolutely, and then you'll hit Save. Okay, so you can access it whenever you want to save your progress, whenever you need to go make changes. Or now you can just choose, now you can hit just Command S if you're on a Mac, or Control S to save your document if you're on a PC. So now you won't have to keep going to File, Save, back and forth. All right, any questions about the brightness adjustment layer, brightness and contrast, and the curves? And feel free to interrupt at any time. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to get rid of these little spots. We're going to remove these specks and these water drops. Now I want to get rid of anything that's unwanted on this photo. So using the zoom tool, you can click and drag an area here to get a little closer. And I recommend doing that so you can see what's being done. Use the move tool to move the photo around if you need. So once you've zoomed in, and also you can always press Command minus to zoom out or Command plus to zoom in. If you're on a PC, Control minus and Control plus will be a keyboard shortcut to toggle back and forth. So I'm going to want to start anywhere there's a water spot or a speck I'm trying to get rid of. And I'm going to click on my Spot Healing Brush tool. My Spot Healing Brush tool is right here. It's the top Band-Aid. If I go here at the top, I can adjust the hardness and the size of my brush. So I'm going to bring it down and bring my size down just a little bit. Okay. Once you've picked a good size, and I'm just looking for a size that will cover these little spots. You can see my cursor right here. It's about the same size as that little spot there is. So we don't want to overlook any of the smaller specks, but to remove the specks, I'm going to click on the Spot Healing Tool brush. Then on each of the specks, I'm going to click on it. Gotta make sure it's getting, oops, I'm gonna back up a little bit. I didn't like that. All right, so now I can go to make sure it's on normal, and you want to make sure that sample all layers is checked. And I was making the changes on the wrong layer, so I want to make sure that I add a new layer before I make any changes. And now I can go in, kind of click, and there it disappears. So make sure you're on a new layer. That was one step that I forgot to tell you. So in here, I'm just going to kind of color it. Now be aware that the nice thing about the Spot Healing Brush tool is that it's kind of sampling all the pixels around it and kind of taking a guess at what you're trying to clean up, which works great on smaller spots. It doesn't always translate. Sometimes it grabs from weird areas when you have a larger area that you're trying to clean up. But for little small spots, this is a great tool to use. So I'm just going in and cleaning up anything that I see as a white. I want you to use yours. I want you to start. Oops, hang on. Photoshop is wigging out. There we go. Give me 1 second, guys. My Photoshop is lagging a little bit. Close out some programs so I can move a little faster. In the meantime, I'd like to invite you to try the Spot Healing Brush on this photo, and I want you to try to see if it works for you. Give me a smiley face if it's working for you so that I know that you don't have any issues with it. Go, we'll close that out. Okay, and hang with me. I'm just trying to close some programs because my computer is lagging too much. We'll try to free up some space here. Okay, so how's that Spot Healing tool working for you guys? Any questions on it? Is it working for you? All right, so here I'm just going to start clicking. You just kind of hold the mouse down and I kind of draw a little black circle. It's great for those smaller spots. So even on the boy's hair, you can go in, clean up the spots in the trees. And if it doesn't grab the right pixels that you're looking for, it doesn't have the right effect. So like for some reason, it's trying to grab his hair. And I don't want that. So I'm going to have to go repair that with a different tool. I can go in and just take anything out of this photo that I don't want. Okay. Looks like she's got a little on her face there. All right. The dogs look good. His collar, it looks like. So his collar is going to be a little tricky. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to make my brush size a little smaller. I'm going to go in and just kind of brush over this area. It's a little too small. All right, so it looks like this is all cleaned up. I'm ready to move on. We'll zoom out. So you can spend a little bit more time on kind of fine tuning it, but for sake of time, we're going to go ahead and move on from the spot healing brush. But that is probably one of my favorite brushes to use. It's a great repair tool. Okay, now we need to get rid of this white patch here. So another tool that you can use is the clone tool. I didn't go over that, but we can also use the clone tool. So if I click on the clone tool stamp right below my paintbrush here, if you hold down Alt Option, what it does, you see how your mouse automatically changed? It's almost like a little bullseye. This bullseye icon, if you hold down the Alt or the Option button on your keyboard and click, it will select the patch that you're trying to copy, and it will allow you to brush. And then you see there's a little a cross down below where you copied that patch. It's showing you what area it's coloring in or filling it in with, what pixel area it's grabbing from. But I don't want to grab grass and throw it up here. I want to grab trees. So I'm going to grab over here at the top left where these trees are, and I'm going to kind of use a circular motion and try to draw in some trees over here, kind of paint over this patch. And then I'll grab some of this bush. And I like going into a circular motion, but you'll notice it starts almost looking fake because it looks like I'm going to have like 3 bushes in a row. So sometimes that doesn't always work. Another thing you can do is grab your selection tool, quick selection tool, and I'm going to do a new layer here, and I'm going to select this white part. Need to reduce the size of my selection tool. It's a little big. Sorry guys, it's taking forever. I always feel like everything, do you ever feel like everything runs slower when you're running Zoom? For some reason, for me, my computer just takes forever to think. Give it a minute. It's not like in this tool. Anyways, so basically we went over the clone stamp tool, which is good to copy portions of the picture, but the problem is it starts looking like an exact copy and it's not very natural looking. So I recommend using, basically to place the pixels, you're going to want to kind of pay attention where it's grabbing from. So if you want to try to place the pixels where the where lines join together or where things you want things to be seamless, you're definitely going to need to kind of practice with the clone stamp tool. It took me a little while to get. All right, so I'm going to reduce the size here. And I usually hold down the Alt or the Option button on my keyboard to kind of, if it grabbed too much of an area, and I can just kind of bring back the edge where I want it to go. Like I don't want it to grab these trees, so I'm going to kind of do that. Okay, perfect. All right, so the next tool that we're going to use is the patch tool. So to repair this area, I'm going to need to go back and forth between tools, but we used the clone stamp tool already where the damage is great, and the spot healing brush tool to remove the smaller unwanted areas. The larger areas can be corrected using what's called the patch tool, and that is right down here. See that patch tool? So you'll want to select that tool. After you make a selection, and I'm going to create another layer. Now I'm going to click on the smaller arrow next to the spot healing brush. It's just down here at the bottom. You can select your tool. And what you're going to do is draw around the damaged area. So I'm just going to draw a circle like this. And it will allow me to kind of drag until I start getting the pixels that I want. The thing is it grabs randomly, so it's never going to look the same twice. You can shift the picture where you want, and clicking and holding as you move the mouse will allow you to kind of see what it's going to look like after it grabs it. This isn't always the answer, but it is a little helpful when you need to kind of fix an area. So that looks good to me. I'll just deselect, but again, you'll want to click and drag until it starts looking like you want it to. So I'm going to draw another circle around this tree trunk here. I'm going to try to grab that bush, and then this area right here I don't want. So I kind of want more of the darker. And I'll just do that. And you, at any time, you can hit Command D or Control D to deselect. Now that I have that white patch gone, I gotta go in and fine tune this. So I'm gonna actually grab my clone stamp tool. I'm gonna hold down Alt Option on this top here because I need to start making the top look a little bit more natural. So I'm gonna grab these leaves here at the top, kind of bring it down. It's almost revealing the roof a little bit, and that's okay. I don't mind that, but it is grabbing his head, and I'm not going to want his head in there. I'm going to kind of go in. It's almost like I'm extending the house a little bit. You could do this two ways. You could add the house in, or you can just continue the bushes, but either way, you want it to be as natural as possible. So I'm bringing in this house here. I don't want the boy. I'm going to have to fix that later. Okay, and then I'm going to grab this tree over here. I'm going to start painting in. I don't like that. You can always hit Command and Do if you don't like something, if it didn't turn out right. Okay, and I'm going to just kind of clean this up. I'm going to just grab other areas of the photo. I'm going to continue this roof. That into the tree. And then I need to get rid of this boy's hair, so I'm going to continue the roof. And you might have to repair some areas. So I got rid of the bushes altogether. You could continue the bushes and just kind of edit and make sure those trees look good, but this is just kind of a rough draft on how to get rid of that little patchy spot. So you'll have to play around with it and spend a little bit of time making it feel a little bit more natural. I'm just going in here painting a little bit more leaves around that roof. You don't want to look like everything's been copied, so you've got to spend some time on it to make it feel and look natural. But I want you to play around with it, do your best. When it's done, save it as a Photoshop file, okay? Are there any questions about how to do that, how to repair that area? Using the patch tool, when you click on that small arrow next to this, when you select it, it gives you a preview of the selection and it can be seen before you're committing to it, so that's helpful. When you're happy with what you see, you can click away from the selection to deselect it at any time. And then you can repeat it over and over again in the areas that are easily repaired with the patch tool. But again, switch to the clone stamp tool, and the spot healing brush tool is needed, especially for those smaller areas that you're trying to repair. Try to make it look as natural as possible. It's going to take some finesse and a lot of practice, so don't get too discouraged with that. But other than that, that's probably all you'll need as far as this picture is concerned. So you kind of want to go in there and kind of fine tune it, make it look as natural as possible. I'm going to kind of bring this. See, I don't want to copy that. I just want to kind of bring it down. Kind of make it look like the brushes. I can even adjust the hardness a little bit of my brush. Oops. Just see what effect looks best for you. But that's all we need to do on this picture. So once you hit save, you've got rid of the watermarks, you got rid of that patch, you've adjusted the coloring. Everything looks good, the brightness. And again, what I can do is hold shift down and select all of the adjustment layers. And then I can hit Command G to group them into one little folder. So now we can look at the difference of the picture. So we go from the before to the after. So it's quite a difference, right? And so this is repairing and this is retouching photos. So not only did I brighten it, but I took out those dark reds, got rid of that patch, I extended the house. I probably could do a little bit more fine tuning on these bushes here if I had more time, but it gives you an idea of what the before and after look like. So make sure that you use those retouching tools. Are there any questions about this photo before we move on? Okay, if no questions, we're going to go on to the next one. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to open where I saved my other photos. All right, here's the other one. So the next one I'm going to do is the Harley before. So I'm not going to save this one. This is our assessment. So we're going to pull up this girl here. We're going to do some true Photoshop retouching. So I'm just going to zoom in close to get a good idea of what she's going to need. So you'll notice here when you open this photo, you'll see some dark spots on the background here. You'll also see she's got some acne that we're going to want to clear up, some other things. Her skin doesn't look very smooth, so we're going to want to smooth that out. So there's a couple things that I would do first. So the first thing I would do is unlock this layer. We're going to need to use the spot healing brush tool to clean up these little spots. And then we're going to also use a skin, we're basically going to make her skin look very smooth. So I will show you how to do that in just a minute. So let's create a new layer. So I've got my new layer here, and it helps to label it. So this could be my spot healing. And then I'm going to go to my spot healing tool. And you can zoom in for this if you want to get even closer. So here I'm just going to start doing small little sections. Get rid of all the blemishes that I don't want visible. Make her skin look as smooth as possible. Don't go too crazy, just kind of lightly touch it up. Because this is not a very high resolution photo, it'll look pretty obvious if you start coloring large amounts, it doesn't look as good. So we want to make sure that we just kind of do it in small little doses or sections here. We'll go down here on her cheekbone, and I'm going to start taking out any acne and any blemishes that I don't want visible. Up here in her inner eye, down here at the bottom, she's got a little mole there I'm going to remove. You can even clean up some of her hair. Get that hair, all those wispy hairs out of her face. We don't want it to look too unnatural, but we want to make sure it's kind of cleaned up. And if you don't want it so intense, what you can do is adjust the opacity of it. So you can still kind of see, but I'm going to take it away. Over here on the gray background, I'm going to just clean up those little gray spots, those dark spots that are on the background. Clean that up. Okay, that looks good. Even in her hair, I can go in, make sure those little white hairs are kind of cleaned up. Anything that looks spotty and uneven can go in. Because some of the highlights I'll want to keep because we want it to look natural, but I'm just going to kind of clean some of it up. Even her hairline, I can go in and kind of clean that up. Okay, so I have cleaned her up about as much as I think she'll need. That's all done on the spot healing layer that I created. The next thing we're going to do is go to this layer, the original layer, right click on it and click duplicate layer. This is a big step that you might not want to forget. So this is our layer copy. And on this layer copy, we're going to create a layer mask. So you're going to add this layer mask on here at the bottom. So did you catch that? So what I did was I went to the original layer, right-clicked, duplicate layer. It made a layer copy, and I added a layer mask here at the bottom next to the FX onto my layer copy. So what I'm going to do is go to Filter, Blur, and click Surface Blur here at the bottom. Oops, make sure you're on the picture on your layer copy. I always forget to do that. So make sure you're on your layer copy there. Okay, go to Filter, Blur, Surface Blur. And it will give you a picture of the girl. So by adjusting the radius of the smoothing or the surface blur and the threshold, you'll get different effects. But you can see how we've kind of gone in and done our spotting. So probably want to hit cancel here, and I need to move that above this layer. Let's see. Let's try it again. Let's go to Filter, Blur, Surface Blur. And what I might need to do is make the effect to both of them. You know what? I think what would be easier is if I just made the changes on this duplicate. So let me start over. I'm sorry. I'm confusing you guys. Okay, so we have our original layer. Right click, duplicate layer. You have your layer copy. Then you're going to create a mask. And here is where we're going to do our spot healing, okay? So we're going to click on the duplicate layer, and we're going to go in and start touching her up, okay? Once we have gone and done that, do this real quick, nice and fast. Then we're going to go in and clean up her skin, and I'll show you how to adjust that. All right, she won't look as great as the first round, but you get the idea. So I'll go in there, clean up the spots on the gray background. Clean up the white hairs up here. Any of these flyaway wispy hairs. And these highlights I want to get rid of. Okay, so for the most part, she's touched up. Now I'm going to go into Filter, Blur, Surface Blur. There we go. All right. So creating the extra layer was kind of messing it up. But oh, the idea here is not to make it look unnatural. So we don't want her to look like a porcelain doll, but we do want to bring in the radius a little bit. We want to reduce it about, I like to do about 5, between 5 and 7. Kind of bring it down, or you can bring it up depending on, actually we might need to do more like 17, I think. And then the threshold, you just kind of have to play with it and see what looks good on your end. Increasing the threshold will make it look almost a little too fake. So I'm going to increase this radius here just until she gets smooth skin, but we still want to see some pores. We don't want it to look too overdone. So maybe the threshold needs to be about 7. There we go. So you can kind of see how clean and clear her skin is now. All right, so now what I'm going to do is, once I've played with the settings and kind of gotten it where I want it to be, I'm going to increase that threshold a little bit. Okay, so now you'll notice if you look here, her eyes look really blurred. You've kind of lost the clarity. I mean, it's blurred out, it's blurred her skin a little bit, but we want to make sure we go in and make it look natural. So what I'm going to do is go in and get the paintbrush, select my brush tool. I'm going to reduce the size a little bit. Now I'm going to select my layer mask on my duplicate copy. Make sure that the fill is set to black, and I'm going to go in and start erasing the areas that I want to crisp up and clean up. So like her eyes, I don't need those to be blurred. So I'm going to make those stand out by kind of painting over. You can increase the opacity depending on how stark of a difference you want it to be. I can even go in and kind of clean up her jawline a little bit. Let me go into the hardness here. I want to bring the hardness down to soft. I'm just going to be painting around her eyes and kind of paint in the inner nose a little bit. I can even adjust the opacity a little bit more. Kind of clean up over here. Kind of want some of her skin to show. Not all, but some. That might be too much. So kind of by painting over this layer mask, it's allowing me to still maintain the natural look of her skin, but it gives me that soft surface blur, that glow that we're going to want to maintain. Kind of go in by her hairline. All right, so she's touched up pretty well. So like I said, you just want to make sure you make that layer copy to go in and make that surface blur. Are there any questions about how to tackle Harley? Pretty straightforward. This one doesn't require as much touch up as the previous photo. Okay, you can share your screen, Misty. I'll close out of this one. And if you'll click share screen for me. And we will see how to get your brush to work. Do you see that icon, share screen? It's got the 2 windows. I think those are pyramids and a sun, that icon. Once you click it, yeah, perfect. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, Misty, is I'm going to unmute your mic so that you can talk. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you're on. All right, so what brush are you? Okay, so what we're going to do is go ahead and delete that layer 1 before we start. Now right click on that original layer.
It won't let me.
Let you right click. Can you right click on it? Won't let you. I'll go ahead and cancel out of that layer style.
It won't let me.
Hmm.
I've had so much hard time with this computer.
That's okay. So we'll just go to a different place. Do you see the four horizontal lines on at the top right of that layers panel?
Yeah,
Those,
right here.
here, click that icon and click on duplicate layer at the very top. I think it's four
There it is.
down from the top. Yeah, if you click that, then you can name it what you want. Layer copy is good. You can hit OK. You can name it later. And then I want you to add a layer mask. It's right next to the FX on the right of the FX. You see that icon, layer mask. Go down at the bottom,
Right there.
right
So,
next to it. Yep, layer mask. Okay, so with the layer copy girl selected, make sure that she is selected and not the mask. So go to your copy layer and click her. Perfect. And now this will allow you to use the spot healing brush and click
okay,
around. You'll want to make sure that sample all layers is checked at the very top. You see where your tool settings are?
right
Make
there.
sure that's selected first. If yeah, and this is a note to everybody out there. If for some reason the tools aren't working, most likely it's that box isn't checked. So
Okay.
okay, now go ahead and try it and let's see if it works for you.
Okay. Aha.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yay, good. So just experiment with it. If you feel that the brush is too hard, you can go up to the top. You see where it says 11 in your brush settings?
Yeah.
You can adjust the softness of that brush if you want more of a natural feel. So right now it's all the way on the hard. So you can bring that cursor over if you want a little softer. So you can experiment with it and see what it
Okay.
does. But great, perfect. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank
No problem. Okay, so we're gonna go back, and I just looked at the clock, so we're gonna have our 10-minute break here. What I'm gonna do is set you guys free to try to tackle this picture. It doesn't require very many steps, so this might be a good one to do. So just make sure you do it, and then when I come back, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and then we'll go into our assessment, and if there's time, we'll finish the other two photos for the assignment. Are there any questions before I go to break? I want to make sure we're feeling good. Okay. If not, we will go right into our 10-minute break and we'll adjourn and see you back here in just a few minutes. Okay, so how are we doing? We getting a feel for how these tools work? All right, I'm going to close out of this girl and go to my Photoshop. There we go. All right, so the next picture that we're going to be working on is this. Now, can you all see this picture? Okay. Is this displaying? Okay, just want to make sure Zoom wasn't working right. Okay, so I did want to mention, going back to the assignment, there are 4 pictures. You only need to photo edit 2 of them. So don't, unless you really want to, just don't worry about doing all 4 of them. Pick the 2 that you want. So download 2 of the photos, use the adjustments layer to adjust the exposure or the color or both of the photos. Use the spot healing to remove any blemishes. Use the clone stamp to remove any blemishes that can't be removed with the spot healing tool. Then use at least one other tool or adjustment of your choosing to complete the restoration. Don't crop or distort the image, just use the tools, the repairing and retouching tools that we've been going over. Save your file as a PSD file like we talked about in the beginning. So you'll go to File, Save As, and then you'll make sure the format says Photoshop right here, and you'll know it's saved right when it says .psd. You'll do a file save as, and then you'll submit the JPEGs for grading and the PSD for grading. So you're going to submit both files, the Photoshop file and the JPEG. Do not flatten your layers in your PSD file. You want to retain the editing capabilities of this, so don't flatten them. You shouldn't rasterize anything. So if you get a pop-up window, please pay attention to what it's asking you. If you get a pop-up window, most likely you're doing something wrong, because none of these tools are going to require you to rasterize your image or the changes at all. So just make sure that you're doing it correctly and keep the layers. We don't ever want to flatten the layers, all right? Okay, as always, keep a editable file for yourself in case you have to go back and make changes. And then we're going to move on to assessment 2 if there aren't any questions. So I think we kind of went over assignment 1 pretty well. I'll go over more pictures or I'll go over more if we have time, but I wanted to get to this assessment really quick. So the color pop effect is going to be required for this assessment. And what it is a really popular Photoshop technique that allows designers to colorize one part of an image while leaving the rest of the image in grayscale. So you'll have a great black and white picture, but maybe someone's tennis shoe or sneaker is in full color, or maybe their outfit's in color, but their body's black and white. So we call it color pop. And so the 2005 film Sin City, I don't know if you guys have seen that, they use this effect very dramatically. So while most of the film is in black and white, there are splashes of red that appear within the frame, like a red car. There's a red dress, blood splatters, etc. So this is an effect that even filmmakers are using. So to create this effect, we're going to utilize some adjustment layers that are found here at the bottom. We've been practicing with the other photos in conjunction with a layer mask. So we're going to be combining the two, layer mask and the adjustment layer. So let's take a look at some of the adjustment layers. If we look here, there's black and white down here, which we're going to be using. There's hue and saturation, which is right here. Solid color, right here. And photo filter, which is here at the bottom. There's also gradient. This is a gradient adjustment layer right here. And black and white is the adjustment layer that transforms an image into grayscale, which we're going to be using. So we'll start that. We'll click black and white. That'll be the first one that we're going to want to use. So already we've transformed this photo. The next one we're going to go into is, we'll make some other changes later, but go ahead and add the black and white adjustment layer. So for this assessment, what we're going to be doing is desaturating the image that we're using. We're going to create it. We're going to make a black and white adjustment layer, and then we're going to make a selection of part of the image. We're going to highlight her hat, and we're going to colorize it using the color blending mode. So you're going to finish the photo by adding a vignette with the gradient adjustment layer along with a subtle photo filter. So we're going to add all that in just a little bit. So first step is first, make sure that your original layer is unlocked. Then click down here on your adjustment layers and click black and white. So you're going to apply the black and white adjustment layer to the image. Do you all have the assessment image downloaded? If not, go ahead and pull that down. You're going to want to properly select the headscarf using the selection techniques that we learned in week 1. So some of the selection techniques, I like using the quick selection tool, and I can adjust my tool size if I need. I like having for a larger section, I like using a larger brush size here. So I'm just going to kind of make sure all areas of this girl is selected. And then it'll kind of prompt me, do you want to keep going? And I'll say yes. And then want to make sure the edges are highlighted. And it helps to get in. Doing it from a distance is really hard. So I'm going to just kind of go in here and make sure part of this hat is selected. I can reduce the size of my brush if I need, kind of get those tight areas. If there's ever a section that you don't want to highlight, you can always hold down the Alt Option button and it will deselect it for you. So that's always handy, but the plus sign means that you'll select it. And I want to make sure I get the entire scarf. Get up and close to those edges. Want to make sure you get them all because it'll be really easy to see where you didn't select once we go in and adjust the blending mode. Make sure the middle, sometimes the middle is hard to see. Part of this hat needs to be converted. Okay. Now I'm going to just check the top here and see if I've got everything on the top. So there's a portion of this scarf that needs to be adjusted. Okay, so now I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to colorize the headscarf using the solid color on the color blending mode. So I'm going to go down here. Oops. Don't do that. And I'm going to click on solid color. This will allow me to give it a color. So you can pick red, you can pick blue, pink, purple. I'll do, I like teal. So I'm going to kind of do a teal color. Like a bright teal. There we go. So this will allow you to see the edges if you got all the edges. And it looks like I kind of missed some spots, so I'll have to go back into this area and kind of adjust it a little bit that way. But once I have it selected, I'm going to go to my blending mode, which is up here at the top. It's where it says normal. And I'm going to select multiply. And that gives me a really cool effect. So hitting multiply, you can also adjust the opacity of this blending mode to kind of lighten it up a little bit, depending on how intense, how much color you want. I love the contrast of the teal on her. You can also grab your paintbrush too, and I'm going to switch this to white. Okay, perfect. If I missed any spots, you can kind of go in with your selection tool. You can keep doing that. I keep hitting the wrong icon. Go into solid and grab that teal. And then I can go to multiply. There we go. All right, so now that her head looks good, her headscarf is all changed. I'm gonna zoom out of this, kind of stand back and take a look at it. It looks so good. You can always go in and adjust the color later. So if you wanted it blue, you can kind of see what it looks like just by moving the color picker. So it's pretty cool. But I'm liking that teal, so I'm going to keep that right there. Okay. And let's see, what else do I need to do? All right, so any questions about the steps here so far? So we colorized the headscarf using the solid color on the color blending mode. And again, we've done all these changes as non-destructive editing techniques. We've not done anything to that original layer. So that's what's pretty cool. Okay, Janitra, let me close out of my screen and I'll unmute you. Go ahead and ask your question. Sorry. So where did I lose you?
Forgot. How you do the color thingy?
Okay, so if you'll share your screen, I'll show you. I'll step you through it. Okay, so let's take a look. You've got your black and white. All right, so now go ahead and delete layer 1. You don't need that layer. So at the same place on your adjustment layers, you're going to click on solid color. It's the same place that you got your black and white adjustment layer. So click down there at the bottom. Yeah, or wherever. That's fine. There at the top too.
This one? No.
Yeah, you'll click that one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing
Oh,
wrong.
whoops. Hit undo, Command Z or Control Z.
Don't think that worked.
Hold down. Are you on a Mac or a PC?
MacBook.
Hold down your Alt Option button, your Command and Z. Alt Option, Command and Z. Back up.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so go to File, Edit. We're gonna back up. We're gonna take a step back. Undo, delete layer. See there at the top.
Oh.
There we go.
Yeah.
And do it one more time.
Redo?
No, go to step backward.
Oh.
See if it brings it back. I don't know what we did. Let's see. Do you go ahead and close out of that picture, just reopen her. We'll start over. It doesn't take that long. I don't know what happened, why it's not saving. Okay, open her up again. There we go. Okay, so on your layers panel, you'll just click on your adjustment layers here at the bottom. See the bottom there? Hold it down and then go to black and white. So this is your adjustment layers area. Now you're going to go to, did you have something selected already?
No.
Okay. So now, unlock your background first so we can see. Okay, now go to the adjustments panel again. You're going to click on solid color. Oh, whoops. So first, we have to grab our selection tool. So grab your quick selection tool or your selection tool, whichever one over there at the top, probably 4 tools down. from the top. Keep going, one up. Hold that down and click on quick selection tool. And then I want you to highlight her scarf. So select her scarf. You can even adjust the brush size if it's too small for you. Up at the top there, you see where it says 30. You can make it the brush size bigger.
Oops. Uh-oh. What happened? Okay, it's just highlighted in one spot. That's not where I want it.
Yeah, you'll need to make your brush size bigger so you can see it, and you're going to want to zoom in. So when you're done with that, you're going to go to solid color under your adjustments panel. So go ahead and highlight the scarf and let me know when you're done. I'll come check on you. All right. So I'll let you work on that. Just message me when you've got it all highlighted. Okay. So we are going to jump back into the tutorial here. And now that you've got her scarf highlighted, we're going to make our black and white vignette. So we're going to be using the gradient adjustment layer to do this. And we're going to set the gradient to multiply. So we're going to go back to our adjustments layers. All of the editing techniques are going to be done in the adjustment layers, okay? So we're going to click on gradient. And you can click reverse to kind of see. I'm going to click on radial so that it kind of highlights her a little bit. And you can scale it back a little bit if you don't want it so intense. You can adjust it because I don't want all of her covered. I really want to feature that scarf. I'm just going to a really subtle vignette here. Bringing in this a little bit more. It's very sensitive, so probably do 155 is what I'm trying to get at. There we go. And I can double click on this. You can also adjust, like if you wanted to do a lighter gray, darker black and white, or you could do a sepia. That's kind of a nice tone. I personally like the black and white, so I'm going to stick with that one. I'm going to hit OK. So what I did was I simply just changed the style to radial, and the scale I did about 155 for my vignette. You can increase it or decrease it however you'd like. So play around with it, see what looks good. It all depends on the kind of gradient that you've set up. But then we just need to apply the photo filter adjustment layer, and we're done with this. So you'll click on this adjustments layer, click on photo filter, and then this will give you lots of different options. So there's lots of different warming and cooling filters. So the warming ones will look sepia, the cooling ones will remove all of the reds. So this is really cool looking. I like the sepia looking color, so I'm going to go with that one. You can also adjust the color. So if you wanted more red, if I wanted more teal to match her scarf. So you can kind of adjust how warm or cool the colors are going to be. I'll go with orange because I liked that. Okay, and then again, you can adjust the density of the color, how intense you want it. I'm going to tone it back a little bit. I just want subtle, subtle color. Okay, that's all I need. So now I've got that really cool vignette gradient. I've got the sepia looking color. I've changed that black and white photo, and I've given it that color pop, which I think is so cool. And it really does pop off the page. This is all you need to do for this assessment. So when you're done, you're just going to save your file, save as, then you'll save it as your DES 104 Assessment 2, first and last name. You'll do a file save as and then choose JPEG. So once you save it as a Photoshop, you're going to go to File, Save As. So the first time you're going to save it as a Photoshop. The second time you're going to go in and save it as a JPEG. Hit Save, and you're going to upload both of those. Don't flatten your layers. I want to be able to see your layers. You get a grade if I can see your layers, okay? So don't flatten them. Let it just preserve its natural state. Okay, and Mystica question, your selection tool always grabs more. I would probably suggest maybe reducing the size of your brush to get, smaller sections of the picture, or you can always adjust it by holding down your Alt Option button and getting rid of the area that you don't want selected. So try that and see if that works. Yeah, no problem. And again, so if like Missy, she's trying to grab things, if it grabs her face and you don't want her face, you just want the scarf, sometimes that means our brush might be a little too big. So you can go adjust the brush size here at the top. Make sure Sample All Layers is on. And if my Photoshop stops thinking for a minute, I'll zoom in and show you how to remove a section that you don't want. There we go. Hold down the Alt Option button and click and drag, and that will remove the unwanted areas from being selected. Just like that, okay? All right, so now I'm going to open it up to questions before we go back to the assignment 1. There's a few other photos we can go and edit now that we've got time. I just wanted to make sure we got to this assignment. Do you need to see any steps done again before we move on? Are we confused at all how to get here? So there's going to be 4 filters you're going to apply to this assessment: black and white, color fill, gradient, and photo filter. And you'll do them in the order that's given to you on the assessment. It'll step you through it if you read the instructions. Janitra, how's that selection going? Did you get it? Do you want to share your screen again? I'd be happy to go over it. Okay, so I'll close out of this. And Janitra, I'll unmute your mic so you can talk. Okay, go for it.
It doesn't look right.
Okay, no, it doesn't. Make sure all sample layers is selected
Oh,
and auto enhance.
oh, I didn't see that.
And that's okay. And then you're going to want to, so you're going to want to hit Command D to deselect.
Oh,
All right, so now go highlight it again.
okay.
But I would definitely increase your brush size so it goes faster. Otherwise, it's going to take forever with that small little brush. You do it, see where it says 30? You click that drop down menu that will allow you to use the slider under size, and you can change the size of it at the very top. Do you see size, that slider? There you go. Bringing it to the right will increase the brush size.
Cool.
You'll probably need to go at least 50.
Okay.
And then you can kind of highlight it and go from there. Might need to go bigger even. So
It does the whole thing. That's what I don't get.
So then you'll have to hold down the Alt Option button.
I don't have Alt on here.
You have an Option button on your Mac next to your Command button.
Yeah.
So click that Option button. Click and hold down the mouse. That will deselect areas that you don't want. You'll have to click and drag it.
Okay.
But I would, if I were you, Janitra, I'd zoom in so that you don't grab parts that you don't want. Get it really nice and close. This will help you see. It's really hard to see from a distance when you're working with small photos. So that might help you, okay?
Okay.
All right. So while you're working on that, we're going to go ahead and move on to Photoshop. Okay, so we've got this kitty cat. I'm going to go over this one too because this one actually needs a ton of work out of all of them. more so than the other one. So there's a few things that you're going to need to do. So like the like the dog photo, the family photo, you're going to need to get rid of these photo creases, and you're going to probably need to use the clone tool for that. You can use the spot healing in some areas, but the problem with that is that it's just going to grab more white. So you will need to use the clone tool. So I would just grab a dark area and then just start kind of painting over it. I'm going to minimize my brush size because I need a nice small brush for this. So I'm just going to kind of go in, and I need to, hold on, before you do anything, create a new layer. Let's create a new layer, select my clone. And go in here and just kind of clean it up. Okay. Same thing with this area. I'll kind of have to go in. I'm going to make sure this has a soft edge. There we go. So I'm just going to go in really fast. I'm using the clone tool, just grabbing different parts of this dark area. I'm going in to get rid of these white spots. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is get rid of the creases, clean up the photo as best we can, and this cat is missing an eye, and I'm going to show you how to replace that eye. Yes, Misty, question. Let me go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Can we use anything besides the quick selection tool? Can we use the lasso or any of that to select stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Any selection tool. We went over all of them in during week 1. So I like
the
using,
lasso seems easier to use. So.
if it's easier for you, use it. Yeah, any selection tool is fair game.
Okay.
Just whichever one you feel more comfortable with. For me, it's the quick selection tool, but for you, it might be the magnetic lasso. So whatever
Okay.
gives you a clean edge. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. No problem. Yeah, so there's lots of different, just like there's lots of different healing tools and retouching tools, there's a lot of different selection tools. So use whatever is best for you. So as I take this clone tool, I'm just going in here trying to clean up these edges. Be careful where you grab. Watch your cursor. See that cursor that has a plus sign? That's showing you where you're going. Now I'm getting dangerously close to that curtain, so it's going to start painting that curtain in areas that I don't want. So I'll need to grab other parts of this black area. And the way you do that is hold down the Option button if you're on a Mac, or the Alt button if you're on a PC. And I'm just going in here, cleaning up all of this fold that I don't want, trying to make this background look as clean as possible. And I'm doing this all on my layer 1, by the way. Or I'm sorry, not layer 1, not the original photo. I'm doing this on a new layer. What another thing I can do is grab my, let's see, where's my patch tool, and I'll grab this and kind of slide it. I'm going to get rid of some of that white. Okay, and then can even maybe use the patch tool for this. Just depends. It's just going to grab the background, so it might not work. Yeah, I think the clone tool would probably be the best job for this. But let me show you how to do the eye really quick. If you hold down your marquee tool, just the second tool from the top, grab the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm just going to draw a circle around this cat's eye. I'm going to kind of move it where I want it. I'm going to copy it. Oh, whoops. Hang on. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to the original layer, draw the marquee. I'm going to copy it, Then go back to layer 2 and I'm going to paste it. So that gives me this copy of this eye. See right there? I'm going to bring it over. I'm going to go to, let's see. I want to rotate it, so I'm trying to think what would be the best. Let's go to image, rotation, and I will go to flip canvas horizontal. Oh, not the canvas, sorry. I want to flip the image. Image rotation. Let's do 180 degrees. Oh, let's try this differently. Maybe I just need to rotate it. Let's go to rotate. Here we go. Or edit. Let me undo that. Hit apply. Okay, so then if we go to image, transform, flip horizontal. That's what I was looking for. Okay, there we go. Now it flips it. So did you see how I did that? After I copied the eye, I just go to image, edit, transform, flip horizontal. And I'm just gonna position that eye where I think it needs to go because he's missing one. So that looks good. And then I'll go back to my layer 1 and just start using that clone tool. So to do the curtain, I'm going to need to make sure these vertical lines kind of stay kind of don't look too unnatural. I'm just painting in there. I'm just going to have to get in really close. Oops, not that close. And I'm just going to grab small sections and just paint straight lines so that this curtain looks nice and clean. Kind of get in there with the cat's fur. Here we go. So the idea here is to make it look as natural as possible. It's going to be hard. These photos are very damaged. So I'll kind of zoom out here. Anyway, so you're just going to go over all the entire photo, get rid of all those speckles. You could even use the healing brush tool in some of these areas. Maybe for the cat. Kind of clean him up a little bit. All right, so again, most of it's just going to be playing around with it. But again, the cat will need an eye. You'll need to use the clone tool quite a bit throughout this picture. This is probably one of the most hardest and challenging of the 4 photos that you have. So if you don't feel like tackling this completely, then I would recommend going with the first 2 that I went over. I'm just going through here. Whoops. Clicking Alt Option every now and again to try to grab different parts of the cat so I can clean him up. Do we have any cat owners here? Go in and clean the roof. This reflection kind of makes it hard because you got to maintain the lines and the pattern of the roof. Go in here. Go in, kind of clean things up. The clone tool is actually very interesting. I love the clone tool because you can take out whatever you don't want. If you've ever taken a family photo and there's been someone photo bombing your family photo, I love the clone tool because you can kind of almost erase them out. It's a good practice. All right, so I'm just kind of going in there. The softer your brush, the better. Sometimes the bigger the brush, it allows you to get a better. Oops, I do not want 5,000. Why is it doing that? Let's change that, shall we? All right, looks like we are all out of time. So we're going to end there. Again, just try to do your best with the clone tool. I realize it's going to be a little challenging, but do your best to kind of clean things up. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Or if you need any extra tutoring assistance, go to Wanda Bryant. Please contact her. Her schedule is in the announcements section of the course homepage, or go visit the Student Success Center. So lots of help between now and tomorrow. So tomorrow is our multi-session. I'll see you at the same time. And bring your questions, bring your assignments, and let's get these turned in so you don't have to worry about it over the weekend. Are there any questions before we end? Feeling good? All right. Well, have fun with this assignment. Like I said, this is one of my favorite lectures to teach. I love photo editing. It's actually a blast. So have some fun with it. Don't worry too much. And then if you have any questions, let me know. Come tomorrow. I'd love to work with you. And yeah, I think that concludes our lecture. Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate all your participation and all your questions, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.